All right, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am DL, your host, America's most buffoonish. Is that a word? I think it's a word. Buffoonish libertarian. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Okay, so let me just dive into the chat here. Let's music's a little bit loud. Let's dive into the chat here really quickly. I need to answer something. So where did it go? Joe says, no Matthew. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And I go back and I look in my messages, and apparently I missed somebody. So I just gonna own that one. Screwed that one up. So Joe, if you're watching, reach out. You can right after the show. I will reach out to Matthew. I will apologize profusely, and then I will get him on the show. So and I'll do that as quickly as I can. Get him on the show as quickly as we can. So I apologize. I know that you've been assisting me, like trying to reach out to candidates and say, hey, let's get you on the show, get you an interview, so on and so forth. So as it turns out, so my VA lady says, did Liberty Dad forget to put somebody on the calendar? More importantly, what I forgot to do was, well, it's not that I forgot. I just totally missed it because I was looking and I was like, okay, I looked like yesterday, sometime during the day. And I was like, all right, who's the next person that's supposed to be on the show? And I was like, oh, great. Right now, as it stands, it's not until Wednesday. So I think it's Wednesday. I'll have to look at my notes, but I did look and I was like, all right, it's not till next week. And I was like, okay, cool. So I will do something else. And so then I dove into getting this show prepared. So that's where we are today, folks. Big oof on my part. I apologize. No, it's not. If DL used the calendar, I just totally missed it. Just like when as soon as I saw that comment, I went and I was like, wait a minute, what? And I went back and I looked and I scrolled up and I was like, oh my God, there it is right there. Plain English. I completely missed it. So I do apologize, Joe. And then I will also apologize to Matthew. I just totally screwed that one up. All right, I'm going to try to get, okay. When I make mistakes like that, I don't take them so well. But I'm going to do my best to carry on because we're here now and we've got what we've got. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So a little bit, a whoopsie, a big whoopsie. And now I'm going to try to not let that drag me down during the show. Man, it's just so irritating. If you worked with me at work, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of mistakes. My mistakes, particularly. But anyway, that's beside the point. Okay, let's get into this. We are where we are, and things have happened how they have happened. So we'll have to move forward and then just resolve them as we can. All right, folks, what have I been saying for years? The answer to our division is conversation, which I would have had today. Anyway, it won't necessarily resolve all of our differences, but it will take us a long way in that direction. So in response to recent events, Charlie Kirk being shot and some other things, conservative talking heads out there have decided that they need to get out into the communities more and have more discussions. I agree. We should. Steven Crowder recently went into a barbershop. Now, if you don't know who Steven Crowder is, he's a white guy. He went into a black barbershop. He had a conversation. I haven't watched the full episode, but I've seen various clips online. And so what I want to do is I want to play this clip of Steven Crowder talking and then just kind of give you some commentary on this clip. Now, again, I haven't seen the show, the episode in full, just because there's a lot of things going on. And lately, work has been keeping me kind of busy in ways that it wouldn't normally I've been more busy than usual with work. So I haven't been able to necessarily, listen to podcasts and other shows and stuff like that. So anyway, let's play this clip. Man, I tell you what, today's going to be. Here's
the point about time.
Nothing is working right today. Today is not my day. It is 7:40. Like, it's crazy because let me go back to the full screen here real quick. I got up. I was up on time. I got my show prep. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm in a good position today. And like the first message I see is like, where's the guest you're supposed to have on? Embarrassing, right? And what you guys don't know is some of this extra work that I've had at work has been a little bit on the frustrating side too. So apparently these last couple weeks are just not my weeks, but we're going to get through it. It happens. You have a string of bad luck, if you will. You just kind of keep your chin up, focus on your work, and continue on. So that's what we're going to do. So I will do my best to not let this drag me down, but it's probably going to show up a little bit. And then, like wrong videos queued up and just, it's not my day. Instead of being angry at events outside of the world, out in the world, I'm going to be like angry and yelling at myself. I'd like need a copy of me over here so I could be like, why don't you get it right? Anyway, let's play this clip from Steven Crowder.
As a conservative.
Oh my God. Kidding me. It's the wrong. Okay. This one.
My faith is what has protected me. My faith is what has protected my heart from becoming racist. But I've had a lot of negative interactions. That's why I'm sitting here. We'll have to edit this because just the word. By the way, if you want a relaxing vacation, stay home. Don't go to. I know, but my kids love it. So I go there, okay? And I'll tell you this. You have like this magic wand thing, you run around the hotel and it opens up chests. Wow. And I'm sitting there, I'm sunken eye, and there was a black guy next to me, obviously a dad with like his daughter and his son. And I just kind of looked at him, we looked at each other in the face like, yeah, we know. This is exhausting. And I know we have a lot in common because his wife or woman is probably in the room because he's there with his kids by himself. I was too. But then we were there at the water slides. My kids are 3. And this happened not once, but about 4 or 5 times. And it happened 3 times with one. Black kid was about 5 or 6. Shoved my son out of the way to get on the water slide. Okay? My son did nothing. Shoved him out of the way a second time, came back. My son's 2, 3 years, which is a big deal at that point. And then at one point I look over, Mom, no Dad. And I just go like, hey, he's being aggressive. Okay, comes back the 3rd time. I go, hey, hold on, you have to wait in line. You know what my son said? My son said, well, Daddy, maybe he's in a real hurry. We should let him go. That was a different interaction. That kid kept doing it to every other and it wasn't the only one. And you know why? Because I've taught my kid, hey, you're going to have people who look different from you, and it doesn't matter, you treat them well. That kid wasn't. And I'm telling you, along with the empirical, anecdotally.
All right. This is the part that you really need to focus on, okay? There's the story, but I want you to listen to this.
If you have a young white person who has these interactions on a regular basis, and I'd be lying to you if I said they were uncommon, while being told they need to shut up because of systemic discrimination, you're going to create a generation of racists. My faith.
All right, so he's absolutely correct. Now, there was a conditional in there, okay? We need to be very careful that we don't exclude everything that he said. Because he said there were 2 parts there. He said, if you have these kind of interactions, and if simultaneously people that are having those interactions are told to be quiet, then you will have a generation of racist. He's absolutely correct. Now, I could go into stories that I have, some negative interactions with people from the black community, but I don't think that's very productive. Okay? What we want to focus on is not the particular story. We want to focus on what can we learn from what we just watched. If we want race relations to improve, we're going to need more conversations like what we just saw. And when I say like what we just saw, I'm not talking about a white person laying out their grievances to a group of black folk. Okay? Not just that. But also a black person laying out their grievances to a group of white folk. And pick any group, somebody from that group should be comfortable giving their grievances to some other group, whatever group they are. Mix and match as you find as they exist, right? Just mix and match. It doesn't matter. All sides need to be prepared to listen and hear things they may not agree with. So in that story, he said, I'd be lying to you if this was, if I said this was uncommon. A lot of black folk might say, well, wait a minute. My kids don't act like that. My kids are, good kids. They would never shove another kid out of the way. They would take turns. That's great. And that's the way it should be. Okay? But it may be uncomfortable to hear, hey, this person had this experience. And their experience is their experience. Like, if it actually happened, right? And we can presume that Steven Crowder is not lying, that he actually had this experience. I can tell you I've had similar experiences. This, again, I'm not going to go into telling you my stories because we don't want to focus on, oh, it's all the black people. And that's, I think, where we're kind of going wrong right now, is that it's kind of become, like, if you get on social media, you see this thing called, like, black fatigue. I think that's gibberish. It's absolute nonsense. Like, black fatigue. Like, are you kidding me? I've had plenty of negative interactions with white people, with Hispanics, with black people, whatever, right? Like, name a group. If I've had a sufficient amount of interactions with people from that group, I've had negative experience. It's inevitable, okay? And the thing is, some of those experiences will be benign. They won't be a big deal. Some of them might be a big deal. If you're at a park with your child and your child keeps getting shoved out of the way by other kids, that's, in some ways it's benign, in other ways it's not. You don't want your child to grow up having a negative perspective about a group of kids. If your child, if for whatever reason, the majority of your child's experiences with a different group are negative, or maybe not even a majority, if a sufficient number of them to stick out in their mind happen, then they will naturally develop a negative attitude. I've said this before about stereotypes, right? Stereotypes exist for a reason, and that reason isn't necessarily because most or even all of a particular group engage in a particular behavior. They exist because a sufficient number of people in a group exhibit a certain behavior that stands out so that other people remember it. That's why we have stereotypes, right? Like to take something a little bit on the lighter side, hopefully, there's the joke about Asian women drivers. They're just not good drivers, right? I mean, my wife's an Asian woman and she's a good driver, right? So, like, she totally breaks that stereotype. But it's happened enough that it sticks out in people's mind, and so therefore it becomes a stereotype. But again, is it half of all female Asian women are bad drivers? Probably not. Is it a quarter? I don't know. Probably not. Right? But it's enough, whatever that number is, that it sticks out in our mind and that it becomes a stereotype. And so we need to become willing to hear these kind of grievances that people have. Some of them will be reasonable. Some of them will not. The starting point is not who is right. It's not the starting point. Okay? When you're having when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're trying to work out differences, the starting point isn't, oh, you're correct and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're incorrect. That's not the starting point. It's just simply hearing the other side and what they have to say, how they feel about it, how they experience, whatever experience that they're talking about, how that impacted them. That's your starting point. When white folks are comfortable telling black folks things that bother them in general, and is very important here, when black folks are comfortable doing this same thing, then we will be heading down the path to improved race relations. Then and then only. And it has to be both sides. It can't just be one group. Like, if white people are comfortable, generally speaking, telling black people, their grievances, okay, but black people are not comfortable telling white people their grievances, we're not there. We're not on the path. Or vice versa, which kind of is how many white people feel today, is that, hey, if you're a black person, you get to air out your grievances, again, true or not, and white people are supposed to just listen. But then when white people feel like, hey, they want to air their grievances out, again, true or not, many of them don't feel like that we are in a position or in a place in society where they can do the same thing. And so I would say, because of that, we are not on the path toward improved race relations. And again, it has nothing to do with, is this person right? Is this person wrong? It has everything to do with, are they being heard? That's what it has. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Now, I will say this. I'm currently working on a project for this show along that line. Can't divulge the details because there's still a work in progress. I'm still having conversations, different conversations, not the conversations where you air out grievances, but the kind of conversations where you say, hey, here's this project, here's this idea. Let's work out the details. I think there's something here. Because I would like to myself participate in similar conversations. And if that means going to a barber shop or going to, any place and having a conversation, church, whatever, it doesn't matter. I will go places. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about, but I am working on a project which hopefully will lead to things along that line where I myself go out into the world and have conversation with different groups of people and say, like, look, here is my perspective on things. Now, sometimes I'll be airing a grievance, maybe. Sometimes I'll just be giving my perspective. I'll say, from my point of view, here's how I think about it. Right? And those are the kind of conversations that will lead us to a better place, so long as other people are willing to hear me. And, again, can't stress it enough, I'm willing to hear other people in their rawest format sometimes. I have always been the kind of person that if I would rather somebody come to me and shoot me straight using profanity than using nice, delicate language to dance around what they're really trying to tell me. I would rather you be like, DL, this is effed up. I can't believe it. Garbage. Strong language all around. Because then at least I know what you really feel. I tend to, personally, I tend to gravitate toward people that are a little bit more rough around the edges when it comes to their language, because I never feel uncertain about how they feel about me or a given topic. Like if you're the kind of person that would be like, DL, you're an ass. That's not pleasant to hear. But guess what? It's unlikely that you're not telling me how you really feel. If you said, DL, I think, like, let me put it this way. If you were to be like, DL, you were an ass because you screwed this show up. You were supposed to have a guest on. I would rather hear somebody say that, for this episode. I would rather somebody say that than to somebody say, DL, it's okay. We all make mistakes. If that's not how you really feel. Now, if you really feel that way, then speak how you really feel, right? But I would rather somebody be straightforward with me, because then I know where I stand with that person. I cannot make an improvement with my standing with you if you're not being honest. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you have to go and cuss somebody out. I'm not saying that. Okay. So don't be like, well, Liberty Dad told me just to go and cuss someone out. You know, let them know. Like, no, if you're very angry about something, then yeah, perhaps. I mean, this is part of the communication part, right? You have to work out what's going to work. You can't just go and be like, well, Liberty Dad told me, so I'm gonna unload like hell on this person. Like, no, that's not necessary. But if it comes down to it, then yeah, sure, that might be necessary, right? There's still a communication level on the person that's sending the message. You still have some obligation. Like, if I'm upset with my wife and I go down and I start yelling at her and screaming, and then, you know, maybe saying some insults, I mean, I might be telling her how I really feel, but if I'm going overboard, I promise you she's not going to receive it as, oh, he's just, you know, letting me know how he really feels. No big deal. You know, like, you could make a situation worse, you know. So what I'm saying is, one, we just need to be able to hear uncomfortable truths. Perhaps those uncomfortable truths come in a way that's a little bit on the raw side, okay? But in the same token, you have to make sure that if you're the one that needs to be heard, you're still mindful about how you're communicating. You can't just go and unload on somebody and be like, I was just telling them my true feelings, right? It's like, and I remember growing up when kids would say that, or people would say that, they would say, I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest. Like, no, you're just covering for being a jerk. There is a point at which you're just being a jerk. Yeah, you might be being honest while being a jerk. And if you can skip out the jerk part, then you're more likely to be heard. That doesn't mean that you have to necessarily put it into flowery language how somebody else, you know, like what you say to somebody else. That just means you're mindful of it. You say, all right, at the end of the day, I want to be heard. What's the best way for me to be heard? And the other person should say, what's the best way for me to hear them? Sometimes it is with offensive language. Sometimes it's not. So hopefully, like, I'm going to go and listen to the rest of that show because I'm really, my interest is piqued. Not just because it's a white guy talking to black people. Like, actually, that's hardly it at all. It could have been like a Korean person talking to, I don't know, a white person and saying, hey, here's some of my grievances. I don't know if Koreans have grievances with white people, but like, if they did, if there are some general, you know, grievances that you see in the Korean community toward white people, then fine, they should be heard, right? But, you know, the point isn't really which group is in which position. It's just that we're having these conversations. And so I think this is the way forward. And I've said this for a long time. We have to be able to have conversations with people. So, you know, look forward, stay tuned, folks, to some new projects coming up. I think they're going to be a lot of fun if I can get them to fruition. And right now, they're looking pretty good. Now, I bet you're wondering where immigration fits into honest communication. You were wondering that, right? No? Okay. Well, maybe, yeah. As it turns out, we need to have honest conversations with ourselves, not just other people, but with ourselves. So let's go back to Dad TV here real quick. And then here's the next video that I want to introduce you to. So this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. A clip of her has some people upset, but she's being honest not only with herself, which is the most important thing, because if you're not honest with yourself, chances are you're not going to be honest with other people, right? Or they're not going to be able to work with you, because if you're not being honest with yourself, then you're not going to be able to communicate in your most honest fashion. And so therefore, other people are not going to be able to work with that in a way that brings a resolution. So let's see what she had to say.
As a conservative and as a business owner in the construction industry and as a realist, I can say we have to do something about labor, and that needs to be a smarter plan than just rounding up every single person and deporting them just like that.
Right.
So, and I'm going to get pushback on that, but it's,
Yeah.
I'm just living in reality from here on out.
Yeah.
And if I'm if anybody's mad at me for saying the truth, then I'm sorry.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, ladies and gentlemen, our next president. Sorry, JD Vance.
I don't know about the president part. We're going to let that one go. But she's right. I've repeatedly said on this show, I've repeatedly asked you, when you're thinking about social policies, domestic policies, think of it in terms of what kind of society are you trying to build or perhaps have, right? We already built a society, but maybe what kind of society would you like to have? And I don't mean, well, I'd like to have some brown people and I'd like to, not that, right? What kind of, how do you want us to engage with each other? Whoever's here, right? I want productive people here. I want, and my bar for productivity, it's not that high. I'm not like, you got to be a doctor and cure cancer. That's a productive. No, you could be a garbage man, and that's a productive member of society. That is like both of those, in my mind, are equally productive. Right? They may have different results, but they're equally productive if you're talking just a very generic sense of the word productive. What does it mean to be productive? You are contributing to the betterment of your fellow man. Somebody got to take my trash. I don't want the trash all piled up in my house. Somebody has to take it away. That's important. Somebody has to, provide me medication when I'm sick or help diagnose me when I'm not feeling so well. Somebody's got to do that. Those are two different somebodies. Those are things that I need. They benefit me in different ways. So when it comes to immigration, my position has been very simple and consistent. Number one, I'm not a fan of deportations for crossing without permission or overstaying a visa. Neither one of those are what I would consider anywhere near a violent crime. Now, I do recognize the current laws that we have, right? And I like to try and respect our rule of law. That doesn't mean I'll agree with it, right? I think there are remedies for when I think the rule of law is immoral or incorrect. When I think there's something that is better addressed elsewhere, or maybe doesn't need addressed at all, whichever the case may be. I do think our immigration system needs overhauled, a massive overhaul. Because of those two things, because we have a flawed immigration system, and because I recognize the current law, as it is, and well, I guess three things, and because I'm not a fan of deportations for crossing without permission or overstaying a visa, then I get to a place where I say, let's, number one, deport all non-citizens who commit serious property crime or violent crime. Now, I put that little adjective there, serious, on the property crime, because, if you shoplift a candy bar, that's a crime. You should be punished for it. But I think that's such a low-level crime that we can still work with. There's still hope for you, right? They're like, in our society, the society that I want to build, there's hope for you. If you go and you steal somebody's Corvette or whatever, steal their car and go on a joyride, I mean, there's technically hope for you, and strictly speaking, there's hope for anybody, no matter what crime you commit. But we are talking about the matter of immigration here. And so I would say, in that particular sense, that's a serious property crime. If you burn down somebody's building, that's a very serious property crime. Right? You're protesting and it gets out of hand and you light somebody's building on fire because you're being a fool. That's a very serious property crime. And for you, bye-bye. If you commit a violent crime, you hurt somebody, you assault somebody, bye-bye. Right? That's where I land. Because, again, I'm answering my own question. What kind of society do I want to build? And this doesn't violate the idea of, deporting somebody simply because they got here without permission or because they stayed longer than they were supposed to. Okay? It fits. This all works together. Now, let's address the laws as written and our existing welfare state, which is its own problem. Okay? I will tolerate deporting people that are here, legally or not, who are not contributing or consuming, or they're not contributing, and they're not being a productive member of society, and they're consuming benefits. So if you're here and you're not, you're not being a productive member, you're not a trash man, you're not a doctor, and you're consuming benefits, then I will tolerate deporting people for that reason. They might say, well, T.R., why would you tolerate? Why are you framing it that way? Because, like I said, the welfare state is its own problem. That's an American problem. That's our problem that we have to figure out. The citizens have put that one into place. The citizens are the ones running that show. And if we can't do any better than providing benefits for people that aren't even contributing to society, that's an us problem that we have to deal with. So I will tolerate deporting people for that reason. Okay? By the way, we should also fire Americans who assist in that. So if your name is on a paper, you gave the stamp of approval for somebody to have benefits that shouldn't have benefits. And again, this is disregarding the idea of whether benefits should exist at all. This is just saying like, okay, they exist currently, who should get them? Well, the people that should get these benefits should be people that have at least paid for them through their taxes. It's not really paying, stealing. It's been taken from them, but they should at least, if we're going to have benefits, they should go to people who have paid or have had their money taken in taxes. Okay? And again, this is all me looking at it and saying, what kind of society do I want? I want one where productive people can come here and be productive, and we can all live happily together and sing Kumbaya. Okay, that's not really going to happen, but that's the society that I want to build. Okay? But I do oppose deporting people who are here, again, legally or not, who are contributing to our society. They're not committing a serious crime, and they're generally acting like any other American. This is why I kind of put that caveat in there, like, hey, if you shoplift, how many Americans have shoplifted? Usually teenagers, okay? Like not generally adults, although it does happen, right? But those are crimes that I think are so low level that we can still work with somebody. There's hope. We don't have to do a lot of work because again, it's we're trying to create a good, positive society here. And I want you to think about it this way. It's not our job to rehabilitate you if you come here from another country. So this is why I'm putting this is why I'm crafting this vision the way that I am. Now, here's the thing. I draw these conclusions not based on some potential catastrophe that might happen if we didn't have immigrants or the dependency that we have with immigrants, but rather, again, on the grounds of what I believe will actually make America great. That's what I want. I want America, and I think America is great. So maybe we should say greater. How do we make America greater than it already is? How do we move forward and just take what we have, which I think is great, and make it better? That's the direction that I'm coming from. And to Marjorie Taylor Greene's point, there is a dependency in many industries on immigration. But that's not the basis for whether laws are good or not. That's not how I don't decide, well, this law's good because, we can afford to get rid of all these immigrants and it's going to be better. Like that would be absurd. That's not why a law is good, because it either it punishes people or requires people to behave in some sort of understood and laid out moral fashion. And for me, my moral fashion is don't hurt people, don't steal their stuff. We want to be simple about it. That's the simple foundation for my morality. Don't hurt people, don't steal their stuff. Okay? If it's minor, if you violate that in a minor way, I might be willing to overlook it and assume in good faith that you could go on to become the productive person that I expect you to be. But as you increase in violations of those, there is a point which I say, it's not my job. I'm not willing. No, we're not doing it because it's so egregious that I'm going to have to do a lot of work. And why should I have to do a lot of work? I got things to do. I've got my job. I've got my family. I've got my podcast. I've got people that are supposed to be guests on the show that I screwed up on, that I got to, figure out and focus on. I don't got time. I don't have time to sit here and try to rehabilitate somebody that's made egregious offenses. But I'm willing to say, okay, maybe if it's a minor one, we can work with that. So I think she is getting some pushback on it, but I think that's because we're not having an honest conversation. We're not having honest conversations between ourselves, between our groups, whatever group it is, whether it's a group based on immutable characteristics or whether it's a group based on mutable characteristics, right? The fact that you're white and somebody's black, maybe you're not having an honest conversation, but we're also not having honest conversations between, say, libertarians and Republicans and Democrats. We're not having honest conversations there either. And those are mutable characteristics. We can change those. But we're not having honest conversations. We're also not having honest conversations with ourselves. And we need to start having honest conversations with ourselves if we want a better country, if we want race relations to improve, if we want America to be great, we need honest conversations, and it starts with ourselves. And we have to say, you know what? Is this really going to be a workable thing to deport every single person that is here that's technically not supposed to be here? No, it's not. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is being honest, and she's saying it's not practical. Now, she's probably doing it perhaps, and I don't want to speak for her too. I want to be careful and not speak for her, but my assumption here is that she's speaking about this from the sense of, does it make sense? Will this work? I think that's an error, but I'd rather have that than nothing at all. But I think the real conversation is, what kind of country are we trying to create or have? Now, speaking of honest conversations, let's check out the chat, and then we'll take a quick break. So let's head on over here and see what you guys are saying. Let's see here. Dang. I was hoping to see that super chat today. Yeah. Well, maybe today isn't the day I get a super chat, since I can't seem to get things put together correctly. Yeah, I'm going to beat myself up a little bit over that. And for good reason, because it'll remind me not to do it again. But where are we? We're at about 2,800 hours. So, get those watch hours in, folks, on YouTube. And we'll advance. This show will advance to the next level. And then we'll be able to take monetization that way. Let's see. What else we got in here? Let's see. We will get you through it, DL. That's why I like my audience. I love you guys. You'll be dragging me through it because I'll be pissy at myself. Let me tell you something. I learned this a long time ago. When you make a mistake, be more angry at yourself than other people. Like, if you want those around you, and I mean legitimately, don't pretend. But I've learned this a long time ago. If you're more upset with yourself than other people, they actually will give you more grace. Now you don't have to be absurd about it. Just be a little bit more angry. And, sometimes it'll be hard. Like, sometimes you won't be, because it'll be something minor, and, they'll be super duper angry, and you're like, okay, I get why you're angry, but maybe you're at a 10. You should probably be at a 6 so that I can be at an 8. Right? So there are those situations. I don't want to pretend like every time somebody else is angry at you, they're angry at the right level. But in general, be more angry at your mistakes than other people are, and you'll get more grace from other people. That's just something I've learned over time. When you're on this rock for 47 years, you learn a thing or two. Let's see what else we got in here. You guys want to hear a secret? Can I reach it? I can't reach it, right? I can't reach it. I'm not going to try to reach it. So that Liberty lady says, nice pivot. I have a little book, a notebook, and I take notes in it. I actually have multiple notebooks. I've got I separate all my notebooks for different things. So I've got one for work, where when I'm in a meeting, I take notes in the meeting, and, like I'm supposed to do this, whatever. So I have a notebook for that. I have like a journal that I'll sometimes write in, and I'll just like express some thoughts or, some whatever, just more personal things. And then I have one for my podcast. I have like a bunch of them. I have like 5 or 6 of them, but I have one for my podcast. And in there are some notes literally on pivoting. And I went to AI and I was like, hey, give me some ideas on pivoting from one topic to the next. And I literally wrote them all down. And it's like AI named them. It was like, this is the such and such kind of pivot. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really care about the names so much. I just wanted some ideas to kind of help, focus on when I'm doing shows like this, where I'm doing maybe, several different videos that have nothing to do with each other. And so like I actually will go and open that book up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good pivot for this. And I'll write it down in my notes, my show notes to pivot. So if you're ever like, wow, this show is a really great show, except for when he fails to have the guest on that he's supposed to. If you're ever just like, man, this is a great show. He does such a good job. He's a great speaker. How does he do it? That's one way that I do it. I literally have notes of all kind of things to help me through, because the truth of the matter is it doesn't all come naturally. So just wanted to throw that little pro tip out there, just in case you guys, you think that I've just, I'm doing such a great job, which hopefully you do, except for the part where we fail to get guests on the show. Let's see here. All right. Joe says, hey, immigration doesn't fit anywhere because it has no borders. Man, I mean, I hear you, bro. I'm not like, I don't know I can't remember if you're an anarchist or not. I am not an anarchist, and I am comfortable with borders. However, to all my anarchist peers out there, if we have the world that I want, let me just say, whether you're an anarchist or whether you're just somebody who takes it further than me, if we got to the world that I want, your world is within sight. Just throwing that out there. So, but I hear you, bro. I hear you. Let's see. I may have shoplifted a plant from a Walmart on a date back in the day. Look, I have done some shoplifting in my day. I don't remember the last time because it was so long ago, like decades ago. At least, let's see, I'm 47. Yeah, probably about 3 decades ago, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's probably been about 30 years since I shoplifted. So, by the way, I'm not giving you permission to shoplift, folks. Don't do it. That's stealing. It's wrong, and you should be punished. I'm just saying shoplifting, stealing a candy bar, stealing a whole car, they're not the same. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's see. That Liberty Lady says, I'm a quality control nut, and I hate when stuff gets past me. I don't like making mistakes when I'm supposed to catch them. I get you. I'm not in the quality control area, but I do hate when I make mistakes and I look back and I go, I really shouldn't have made that mistake. That was an unacceptable mistake on my part. So, all right, let's see. What do we got for intermission here? Let's jump on over to intermission. I think this will be a good one here. So we will jump to intermission. We will be back, and then we will do the last video.
What's up, Solutionaries? Maj 2 right here, founder of Black Guns Matter and the Solutionary Center. We offer basic firearms classes, conflict resolution, and a whole host of other skill sets that are beneficial to our communities all around America. We're able to do these classes because of your voluntary donations. We don't accept government funds. The people that choose to pay it forward to remove the financial barrier to entry are choosing to do so voluntarily. So you can support at givesendgo.com/solutionary. Give it whatever level you can afford to do. Repost the content. Let folks know that we have a community to save and we have to do it ourselves together. givesendgo.com/solutionary. Be safe, be solutionary.
Awesome. All right. So now we're going to get to the last video here. Matt Walsh. Now, I beat up on Matt Walsh sometimes, but I've told you guys that with Matt Walsh, it's like 50-50 on whether I'm going to agree with him. Like, I don't know if it's exactly 50-50, but it feels that way. Like 50% of the time, I'm just like, dude, no. And usually my disagreements or agreements are fairly strong. I'm not usually like, yeah, I guess I kind of see his point. I I kind of agree. No, I'm usually like, yes, you are absolutely correct. Or I'm like, dude, how could you get that so wrong? So my character is I don't like criticizing people that I'm unwilling to give praise to. And you can go back through my history if you really wanted to. You could dig deep and you could find that pretty much every single person that I've been critical of, I have also said something positive about. Doesn't matter who they are, okay? And they could be people that I'm no longer on good terms with. You could go back and you could see where I have, that's my personal rule, is to say, if I'm willing to criticize you, I better be willing to praise you when you get it right. That's it. And so today, I think that this next video here is something that Matt Walsh has got right mostly, okay? There are a couple elements in there for which I disagree with, but I think overall, his point that he's made is correct. So since I've beat up on him a few times on this show and been critical of him, I guess I got to do the reverse now. I got to reciprocate now. I've got to do the opposite. I've got to show where I agree. So we're going to do that. So let's go to Dad TV real quick, and we will play that video that I messed up and was playing earlier because, you know, when it rains, it pours on mistakes. Here we go.
Here's the point about tolerance. I say intolerance is a virtue because it is. Tolerance, on the other hand, is not a virtue. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to tolerance in all contexts. It means that it's not a virtue. And I'll explain why, even though this is the kind of thing that shouldn't need to be explained.
Okay, let's pause here. I agree. Tolerance is not a virtue. And he's going to explain why in just a moment. But I agree with him right off the bat. Yep, you're right. Tolerance is not a virtue. And intolerance can be a virtue. Okay, so I'm in agreement with him here. Okay? And now, as far as, like, it shouldn't need to be said, honestly, I'm kind of past that. There are so many things in this world today that I feel like it really shouldn't need to be said, but they need to be. So I think we just need to get past that notion. Like, is it true that some things shouldn't need to be said that at a certain age you've kind of learned over time? Yes. But there's so many of them. I mean, we have to have warning labels on like a screwdriver, like don't stick in your eye. Like at this point, humanity will be lucky to survive. But anyway, let's keep going.
Are there things that we should tolerate? Yes, obviously. But there's lots of things we should tolerate. I tolerate stuff every day. I'm a pretty intolerant guy, and I tolerate things. I tolerate every person I walk by on the street. I'm constantly tolerating.
That's kind of weird, but okay.
There is nothing virtuous or noble about it. Okay, tolerance is not a virtue. It's not something that we need to encourage. We don't need to laud people who demonstrate tolerance. It takes no courage or even any effort to tolerate things. Tolerating a tolerable thing makes sense.
Okay. I agree with him. I think he's missing something, though, that's very critical in this conversation. So here's what happens a lot, is that people will insist that what is tolerable to them must be tolerated by others. Thus, it becomes insidiously presented as a virtue. So let's use some real people here. Let's say that there's a thing. We don't have, it could be anything. I find it tolerable. And maybe Matt doesn't. So what might happen in the world is that I might say, well, I find it tolerable and Matt doesn't. So therefore he should tolerate it. And see, being tolerant is a virtue because Matt has to do some work, right? But that's the problem is like, and he goes into this a little bit more here. This is the problem, is because I am demanding of him something that for me is easy and then presenting it as virtuous because he has to do the work, but I have to do nothing. And I think that's the point that's missing, is just that that's the way it plays out sometimes, quite often, actually, is that people will want you to tolerate what they tolerate, and they present it as a virtuous thing because you're on the struggle bus, but they're not. That's not really how it works. And so I think it's good to have this conversation and lay out what is, what does it mean to be tolerable? What does it mean to be tolerant? What does it mean to be intolerant? We got to be careful with our words here so we don't get confused and tongue-tied. But it is if it's of no effort to me because I'm already because I already find it tolerable, then I can't claim it as some virtuous thing and then give you a hard time for not fulfilling it. Right? I'm just basically asking you to be me. And that's absurd. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And I know that with these words, tolerable, intolerable, like it sometimes can get a little confusing. But it's the idea that you should behave like me when it's no effort on my part, and then I present it as like I'm doing something virtuous. But I'm not. I'm doing what comes natural to me. You're the one doing all the work. I'm just presenting as virtuous to kind of force you into doing it, to kind of like use this virtue as a cudgel to beat you into submission. To say, well, don't you want to be virtuous like me? It's like, well, wait a minute. Are you being all that virtuous? How much effort did you actually have to put into this? Because if you didn't have to put any effort into it, and I have to do all the effort, that's not really virtuous. That's you hiding behind virtue to try to force me to do what you want me to do. That's all that is. So again, we got to have honest conversations.
It's logical. It's not a heroic act. It's not an act at all. You can tolerate while doing nothing. You can tolerate while sitting on your couch. You can lounge in your living room eating Doritos while congratulating yourself for all the tolerating you're doing. Hey, everyone, look at me. I'm being tolerant. You can declare as the crumbs fall on your shirt. That's why I never said, as has been claimed by my critics, that tolerance is bad or has no place in society or whatever. Tolerance is the default state of all people. Tolerance is the lowest effort thing you can do because you aren't doing anything.
He's correct. It is the lowest effort. So again, if I tolerate, like let's say, I'll give you a good example. Okay. My son is 6. Sometimes he runs around the house yelling and screaming. Generally, I tolerate it because I'm like, that's what little boys are supposed to do. They run around and they scream. Okay. I don't really consider that a virtuous thing. I consider that the expected default position of a parent, to recognize that your child, who is 6, will run around the house and scream at sometimes. Right? Like that at times. That's what they do. There's nothing virtuous about. So if somebody else is being a little bit cantankerous and they're not, they're like, hey, you be quiet, or you go outside, I'm trying to work. Like, and they're not being very tolerant of that particular behavior, I don't think it's appropriate to beat up on them and be like, well, I can't believe you. You're a bad parent. Like, because, I'm virtuous because no, you're just doing what I would expect would be natural for a proper parent, right? Like there's no, and like you said, it's kind of like a default. And if it's the default, then should you get praise for it? No, you should not. If it's the default, that's what you should be doing. You should be tolerating your children being children. Does that mean all the time? Not necessarily. That's a conversation for another day. But the point here being, just to kind of illustrate in the context of something that's more understandable, like you shouldn't praise me for allowing my kid to be a kid. Nor should I condemn you if one day you're not doing such a good job of it. Right? Now, there could be a conversation to be had and say, hey, I think you need to move toward this expected default position. We could have that conversation. But again, the issue of virtue and not being virtuous, they're not at play. It's a different conversation to be had. We have these things when we communicate with each other. This is why maybe I should have labeled this episode one about communication. Let's continue listening.
Which, again, when you're tolerating tolerable things, fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to give you credit for that. I'm being tolerant. Okay, good for you. What, so you're doing nothing? It's like you're just doing nothing and allowing someone to do something.
Basically, like to his example, I could be sitting on my couch eating some Doritos. I don't eat Doritos, but if I, some sort of snack, and just allowing my kid to run around and play as kids do. Should I get an award for that? No. Like, there's not, like, I'm doing what is somewhat to some degree natural, right? So I hopefully I'm making the point here, and you can see I am now agreeing with Matt Walsh for a change.
Cool. Good for you. It's not the kind of thing we need to, like, we don't need pastors up on the pulpit preaching, well, this is why we should be tolerant. Which pastors do preach about that all the time. And a lot of people love to hear it because it requires nothing of you. That's the great thing about tolerance as a virtue. I don't have to do anything. It requires absolutely nothing. Which is why it's not a virtue. Intolerance is a virtue, though, because it is active. It is a thing you do. All virtues are things you do. If a virtue requires you to do nothing, it is not a virtue. If you're saying to yourself, wow, I really like this virtue because I don't have to do anything. This is a really easy virtue to have. Well, hate to break it to you, that means it's not a virtue.
Okay. So I agree that a virtue does require something of you. But let's be clear. Not everything that you actively do is a virtue. Okay? So it doesn't work in the reverse. It's not like, a virtue is active and an active thing that you do, and an active thing that you do is a virtue. It depends. He talks about it. So let's listen.
Intolerance requires you to get up and do something, or speak out, or at least stop chomping on the Doritos for a second. Intolerance is noble and brave, provided, of course, that it's directed at something actually bad.
Ah, there we go. Just because just being intolerant of something in itself is not virtuous. Okay? What is that something, and is it actually a bad thing? More importantly, can you demonstrate that it is indeed a bad thing? And that, of course, requires what? If you said communication, then head to the front of the class. Bingo! Like my button worked. Sometimes it doesn't work because I have the settings wrong. We're getting somewhere today, folks. We're moving forward in my destructive behavior today, and you guys are being very tolerant of all my mistakes. Okay. Anyway, so but yes, we have to have communication and work out what things are good, what things are bad, because if something is a bad thing and you're intolerant of it, and as Matt says, you speak out against it, then yes, that is virtuous. Like, I would argue, let's say something modern today. How about the ICE raids that are happening? Okay? I think the way that they're being handled is a bad thing. I speak out about them. That is a virtue. I think objectively showing up, snatching people up off the street while you're wearing a mask and throwing them in a car like you're kidnapping them, not the standard, hey, Mr. Rodriguez, we have a warrant for your arrest because a judge has determined that we can arrest you for the allegations of these particular crimes, right? That would be one thing. But snatching people up and then deporting them in the cover of the night, like the administration has done, I think that's objectively a bad thing. That is not something that I want to happen. So I speak out about it. And I say, this is a bad thing. That is me being virtuous. And could I demonstrate that it's bad? Yes, I can. Right? And then I have conversations with other people and I communicate that. And we have a conversation about these kind of things. Do you see how this works? Let's continue. We're almost done with this video.
Yeah, that's the one qualifier. Intolerance is only virtuous if it's directed at evil. Obviously, being intolerant to good things is not virtuous. I would think that such a stipulation is so obvious that it doesn't need to be said out loud. Intolerance to, something benign right, makes you a jerk.
Let's take a back to my kid running around. If my son, let's say he has a friend over and they're being boys and they're running around, they're yelling and they're, makeshift guns and pow, pow, I'm going to get you and whatever. And then I'm sitting there and, they're being boys and then it's benign, right? Like their loudness is benign. It may be annoying to me in the moment. And if I just yell at them and be like, will you be quiet and go play chess or something quiet, right? Like, that's just me being a jerk, right? There are other ways to handle that. I could, this is my point with communication, right? Remember earlier when I said how you communicate matters? Well, let's say that I'm trying to work and the boys are running around and maybe I'm on a meeting and I can't have them yelling. Well, then I can go to them knowing that this is a benign thing and I can say, hey boys, I'm in a meeting for about 20 minutes. Can you please be a little quiet so that I can be in the meeting? And then when I'm done, you guys can go back and run and yell and scream and have fun and whatever, right? I'm still addressing this inconvenience of mine, but I'm doing it in a way that makes me not a jerk, right? Because it is, in fact, still a benign issue. It just happens to be one that in the moment is a bit of a problem for me. And so the way that we communicate matters. The way that we understand the world around us matters. We have to have these conversations so that we can put ourselves into the right position, the right frame of mind. Let's continue.
Or if you've got a whole bunch of pet peeves, this is why we say pet peeves are like, well, that's the reason we call it your pet peeve. It's just something that annoys you, but isn't really bad necessarily. But that's why it's a pet peeve. It's a pet, it's yours. And so being intolerant of people who are doing something that's a pet peeve of yours, that makes you a jerk, right? Intolerance to something good and virtuous makes you a leftist.
Okay. This is the point where I kind of disagree with him a little bit. And the reason why, he says, being intolerant of something good makes you a leftist. However, if we're having honest conversations with ourselves and each other, conservatives are sometimes intolerant of good things. For example, immigration, right? There are a lot of people out there that are like, deport them all. And I'm like, well, what world are you trying to build? Just one where it's only people that look like you, that only speak English, that were only born here? I don't think that's objectively a good thing. I think you're being intolerant of immigration, and we need to have a conversation about that. We need to have a conversation about why immigration is a good thing, or at least, if you want to make the argument, if you want to nitpick, you could at least say it's a neutral thing. But it's certainly not a bad thing. It can be a bad thing in certain contexts. If people immigrate here that are only criminals, violent criminals, that's objectively a bad thing. If people come here and they want to contribute to our society, well, I would say that's objectively a good thing. And it fits with the idea of what am I trying to build? Okay, let's continue.
But intolerance to what is truly evil and wrong makes you a good person. It is a loving and good act. And we have not had nearly enough intolerance in our society.
Okay, I think that's enough for that. I agree with him. We haven't had enough intolerance, and we've had this idea beaten into our head that we need to be tolerant of all these things. When actually, what I would argue is what we need to be is more willing to have conversations with each other, more willing to hear each other out, so that we can identify what is objectively good, what is objectively bad, what is good for what we're trying to accomplish, what kind of society do we want to have? Those kind of answers come about when we have conversations. Whether you like it or not, we are a multicultural society. So we're already there. This is not like we want to build one. We're already there. You've got white people, you got black people, you got Indians, you've got Native Americans, you've got Mexicans, you've got Chinese, you've got Japanese, all of it, Germans, whatever, Australians, everybody. You got all kind of people here already. They're not going anywhere. So how do we go from where we are to where we want to be? Well, first we have to decide, what do we want to be? Well, we have, in order to say what do we want to be, we can start with saying, what are we? We are currently where we are as a multicultural society. What I would like us to be, and I think in simple terms, I would like us to be a society where we value productivity, and that the bar for productivity is not super high. Like I said earlier, if you're a garbage man, some people might say, well, that's just a garbage man. You don't even need a high school education to do that. I don't know if you do or not, but some people might believe that, right? But at the end of the day, even if you don't need a high school education, even if you don't need to know how to read, taking the garbage away from my house is objectively a good thing. And you are doing a service for me. That is the world that I want to live in. When other people say, you have a service, you have a need, I would like to fulfill that. Awesome. Oh, you want to be a doctor and you want to try to find a cure for cancer? That's awesome. That is also a need. There are different needs, and they span all over the place. And I want people to find where they best fit. And I want the easiest path for them to get to that place. So on this show, when I talk about libertarian ideas, I believe these libertarian ideas will get us there. And so now it's just a matter of having these conversations and communicating. And yes, along the way, we're going to have disagreements. We're going to view the world differently, and that's okay. We need to have conversations about that so that we can say, is this objectively a good thing or a bad thing? To the story of Steven Crowder when he took his child to the park and a particular black child kept shoving his way in, right? Is that the kind of society that we want, where other kids will just shove their way in and then our kids go, well, maybe they're in a hurry and we should just let them go? Is that the society we want? No, it's not the society we want, because we also don't want the white child shoving the black kids out of the way and the black kids going, well, I guess they're just in a hurry. We don't want that either. How do we get something better than that? Well, it's when we have a conversation and we can say, you know what? I had this experience and it soured me. In fact, I've had several experiences, and unfortunately, negative things stick out in our mind more so than positive things. That's why I discard this whole, black fatigue, because I'm like, black fatigue? Yeah, if you only focus on the negative, then yeah, you're going to have fatigue, black fatigue, white fatigue, Indian fatigue, Japanese fatigue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? If you only focus on the negative. So we need to have these conversations so that other people can say, well, yeah, I've had some negative experiences too. And then if we do the communication, the conversations correctly, then what will end up coming out are the positive things. We say, well, yeah, actually, I do know a lot of good black people, or I know a lot of good white people, or Japanese people, or whatever. That has to come out. And then as we have these conversations, we can understand where the other person is coming from. And we can start to get ourselves to to a place where we've objectively identified the good and the bad. Now, here's the catch. We won't always agree on what's good and bad. But if we can figure out where we have the most common ground, then I think that makes our society better. And that leaves us with only the things where we actually really truly disagree. And for those, we can have a different conversation about how we address those in the future. But for right now, we need to at least get ourselves to the point where we look at each other and say, we understand our commonality. Because that's what's going to make America great, is when we are really embracing the commonality, much of which we may not even realize because we're too busy focusing on the negative. We have to be tolerant of other people's views and ideas long enough that we can have a conversation about them, so that we can get to the place where if we're intolerant about something, it is something worth being intolerant of. I don't think it's a value. I don't think it's a virtue, actually, to say, I'm intolerant of this if you haven't figured out what you're tolerant of. the maximum that you're willing to be tolerant of. Like if you haven't gotten to that place, then I think that you're doing a disservice to saying, well, I'm intolerant of this and I'm being virtuous. It can be a virtue, but it can also be a failure, even if it's supposed to be a virtue. Do you see how this all works? And again, I come back to, we got to have conversation. Speaking of conversation, let's head back to the chat and we will see what you guys are chatting it up about. And then we'll end the show because I got an appointment I got to get to. Let's see what we got here. In terms of Matt Walsh and daily wider writers, the Zionist playbook only requires them to lie about 50% of the time. I could make that argument about everybody. We're all busy lying, right? Or being dishonest. Dishonest if we're saying, we're not having an honest conversation. Now, do they have whiter writers? Perhaps. Do I care that maybe the majority of the Daily Wire is white? I don't really care. You know why? Because 100% of the people, 100% of the writers and the producers of the show on the Liberty Dad show are Native American. That's me, 100%. Right? Maybe not producers, but 100% of the front-facing people on this show are Native American. There's no diversity here. I don't really care about diversity for diversity's sake. Right? And this is part of having that conversation. Like I could have put this comment up on there and then, said, oh, this is a terrible idea, blah, blah. Or I could say, you know what? Fair point. Let me expand upon that. I think everybody has a playbook. I think everybody's playbook kind of forces them to have dishonest conversations or not be as forthright. And that's why we're having the problem that we are. What else we got in here? Yeah, we'll end it on this. DL is around 200 watch hours away from being monetized on YouTube. If you watch on Facebook, X, or Rumble, please watch an episode or 2 or 10 on YouTube, even if you just play it and walk away. Like, if you have to just play, like, if you listen to me and you're just like, man, I am so intolerant of some of his ideas, then just walk away. But keep playing the shows. Help a brother out. Know what I'm saying? All right, folks. That is my show. I hope you found it informative and inspiring, mostly inspiring. And whether you're watching me live or whether you're watching me later, come back, drop a comment, and let me know about your thoughts. Did I miss something? Do I need to offer a correction? Perhaps you just want to come back and just be like, DL, your brilliance was just amazing and how you broke down tolerance and intolerance and how we should best approach it and communicating and that we should be willing to have conversations and hear uncomfortable truths from other people or uncomfortable things that aren't even true. If you just want to come and just dole the praise on me, I promise you I will be very tolerant of it. But in the meantime, it's time for me to head out and I will see you guys tomorrow. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.